You're finally sitting down to relax. Maybe you're on vacation. Maybe it's a Sunday afternoon. And within moments of sitting down, your mind goes to, I should check my email. Oh my gosh, I have this project I have to get done. I need to get ahead for next week. Or my podcast isn't prepared and ready to go. I shouldn't just be sitting here. There are way too many things that I have to do and I have to get done. So technically, your body might just be sitting and relaxing, but your mind refuses to rest. And so this is what I call the voice of, air quotes, I have to energy. I have been talking and teaching to my other groups about this have to energy. So I'm Kim Gross, and I am the host of Masks Off, Inner Freedom for People-Pleasers and Perfectionists. And I'm so grateful that you are here with me today. And I am very excited to be talking about this topic because, once again, I said that it is very much up for me. I have been in have to energy for most of my life. And right now, the layer of the onion that I'm intentional about right now is really taking a look at this I have to energy that goes on for myself. And I'm learning how to really work with it and slow it down. So again, the voice that says I have to is not necessarily coming from reality. There are some things that we have to do. I'm not going to say that you don't have certain responsibilities that you need to attend to. You do have to pay taxes. You have to have food to eat to survive. You have to have clothing. You have to have shelter. So there are certain things. And if you have young kids, you have to take care of your kids. You can't just let these little ones run wild. But most of the time, and what I'm honing in on right here is the part where the I have to energy is coming from your inner controller. So I want to take a moment and have you meet the inner controller. What do I mean when I say the inner controller? The inner controller to me is this part of us that tries to control everything. It's the part of us that is anticipating problems. It's the part of us that is trying to prevent us from making mistakes. It's the part of us that is always scanning a room and making sure whether it's okay to speak up and to say something. It's the part of us that is constantly staying productive or avoiding disappointment. Essentially, this inner controller part of us is trying to maintain control. So at first, this part of us was protective. When we were young and we were little, things may have felt unsafe. You may have grown up in a dysfunctional family. That was the case for me. And there were many times in my home that there was chaos. And there were so many times that my mom or my dad didn't know how to show up for me and create safety. Not because they were bad parents, but because they just didn't know. They missed the mark. They didn't necessarily know how to attune to what I needed. And maybe to add in there, I was a highly sensitive girl And so I would feel very scared or unsafe most of the time. So in order for me to feel this quote, false sense of safety, or at least it felt like it was, I subconsciously created this inner controller, which ended up just running the show, right? And it actually became one of the masks that I wear. My inner controller, your inner controller, it's a way to protect yourself. So that's how it initially develops. And at some point, we did learn early on that if I just stay on top of everything, I'll be safe. If I do everything perfectly, then I won't be criticized. If I keep everyone happy, then there won't be conflict, or I won't have others be disappointed with me or upset with me. That was a big one for me, that I really tried so hard to make sure that my friends, my teachers, my parents, other family members, that they were just always happy with me. They were pleased with how I behaved, the things I said, and just how I carried myself, because I was so freaking in control. My inner controller was really driving the bus in those days and for many, many years. And still she does drive the bus at times. But this is why I'm doing this episode right now, is to help you become aware of when your inner controller is showing up, because the inner controller is usually running the system, running the show.
I also want to share something especially meaningful: my real and unfiltered community. This is a small, supportive space specifically for young women who are tired of pretending they're fine, tired of people pleasing, and tired of feeling like they have to be perfect to belong. Inside the community, the girls get live group calls, honest conversations, tools for emotional regulation and confidence, and most importantly, a space where they don't have to wear a mask. It's not about being fixed. It's about being seen, supported, and learning how to trust yourself again. If you're craving connection and a place to grow alongside other young women who truly get it, this might be for you. If you're interested, send me an email. The details are in the show notes, and I would love to connect with you.
Again, this is the important part of why I want to do this episode, and to help you really see how this shows up in your life, because the protection piece of the inner controller eventually becomes pressure, this internal non-stop pressure. And that's what I call the I have to voice. And the I have to voice, or the I have to energy, is the inner controller. So this is the language that the inner controller speaks in. And it loves to say, I have to. So for example, the inner controller is saying, I have to stay productive. I have to keep things running. I have to keep things moving. I have to make sure that I get everything done. I have to make sure everybody is okay. I have to make sure everything is all taken care of for my family members. I have to get ahead. Like, getting ahead is a big one. If I can be ahead on my podcast episodes, like by 2 or 3 weeks, which often doesn't happen, but if I can, it's like this sense of safety then for some reason, until eventually the episodes are out and then I'm just having to create more of them. So I have to get ahead. I have to make sure everything is okay. I can't fall behind. I have to be leaning into the next moment, getting everything done all right away, fast, quick, and perfectly. Just as I say that out loud, I feel my body tensing. I feel the pressure because the inner controller, our inner controllers believe that if we stop pushing, if we stop the pushing energy, that something bad is going to happen. And so it creates this constant internal sense of urgency. So think about that. If we stop pushing ourselves so hard, what do you think will happen to you? Like sometimes I really just pause and say, Kim, when I notice and catch myself in a place of I have to energy and I feel a sense of urgency and I'm rushing through the day to get everything done, to make sure that I'm ahead, I'm not falling behind, I'm taking care of everything. Sometimes I just pause and say, what the heck am I rushing for? What am I trying to hurry up and get to the end of my life? Because that's what's happening. I'm 57 now and I cannot believe how quickly time goes by. The days fly by, the weeks fly by, the months fly by. My oldest child is going to be 27 in a couple of months, and that blows my mind. And so when I think about my life in that way, it stops me in my tracks because I question, how do I want the quality of my life? Do I want to continue to rush through my life like there is this sense of urgency? Where's the freaking fire, right? It's like I'm running from a fire. Where is the fire? I ask you, where is it? There is no fire. There's no bad guy or criminal robber chasing me to make me have to have such a sense of urgency to hurry up and get through my day. And I just think it's such an important question to contemplate. And I invite you to think about this as well for yourself in your own life. If you are hearing any of what I'm saying, if you are picking up what I'm putting down in terms of the I have to energy, the inner controller, I do invite you to think about that question. What are you racing toward? Why are you rushing to get to the end of your life? So the inner controller, I just want to say some more about this inner controller so that we can fully understand how she operates. And the inner controller is very closely related to our nervous system's survival states. When the nervous system, our nervous systems sense pressure or uncertainty, it activates a survival response. So one of the survival responses that it activates is the fight response. How does that show up with the inner controller? Let me control the situation. Let me micromanage everything and everyone. And there may be a lot of irritability because when you cannot micromanage everyone or everything, you may end up feeling irritable, or just having that amount of pressure makes you irritable. And you may actually end up pushing harder. So that would be a fight response. One way the inner controller would show up. Another way that the inner controller can show up in terms of a survival response is the flight response. And the flight response means, let me just try to freaking outrun the pressure that I'm feeling. So how do you outrun the pressure? Well, let me just stay twice as busy. And then that leads into toxic productivity, which is what I talked about on the last episode of this podcast. So you can go check out more. If you want to know more about the toxic productivity, check out that episode. The flight response for the inner controller may also look like multitasking or having racing thoughts. So these are ways that you can identify if you have we all have an inner controller. These are the ways that you can identify how your inner controller is showing up. And honestly, it's also when the inner controller is being busy, multitasking, overproductive, overfunctioning, racing. This is where the inner controller thrives. It loves this constant doing. The constant doing equals safety in the inner controller's mind. Constant doing and productivity is perceived safety. The other survival strategy that can show up for the inner controller is the freeze response. And then this is where you get to the point of shutdown, burnout. You're totally exhausted. You feel numb and you have brain fog. You barely can function. You're just like somehow showing up at your job or school or whatever, and you're just moving through the day. So that's what happens when you get to the freeze survival response. And then the final one is fawn. Fawn is another survival response for the inner controller, which is just trying to keep everybody happy. Like, I just need everybody to be happy, happy, happy. And so it shows up in people pleasing, and it shows up in those micro yeses, which is yet again another episode from a while back that you can go check out on micro yeses, and also can end up being very exhausting as well. So many high achieving people, over functioning people like myself. And if you're here watching this or listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume that you have a certain amount or certain flavor of being a high achiever, because you can relate or identify with the perfectionism. So many high achieving people tend to live primarily, and this isn't like a golden rule, but primarily are in the flight mode. And the inner controller keeps you there. So the question that I want to ask now is, why does it feel like rest is unsafe? Why do you think that rest feels unsafe for the inner controller? This is a really important point to highlight. When we slow down, when we really try to slow down, the inner controller gets nervous. Just like I said earlier, that the inner controller perceives doing and productivity as safety. So if you were to really slow down, the inner controller is going to start to freak out and tweak a little bit, because slowing down removes this illusion of being in control. And that's what the inner controller is here to do, is to, quote, be in control. So it might start saying things like, your inner controller might start saying, oh my God, you're wasting time. You can't just sit here and do nothing. Like just sitting and looking at the sun or the grass or the trees, like who has time to sit and do that? You should be doing something else. Don't forget you have this project that you have to get done, or don't forget this deadline, or you really need to hurry up and do X, Y, and Z because, it's been on the back burner now for a week. You better get it done. And what else has to be done next week? What has to get done this month? What has to get done this year? You get the idea, right? So again, the inner controller believes that if you allow yourself to rest, that there brings up a certain amount of vulnerability with that. Why would vulnerability come up for the inner controller if you start to rest? Well, there are two things really. One is just because the inner controller then loses its job or thinks it's going to lose its job by not being around anymore. And it has had this role, this purpose in your life for a long, long time to keep you safe. So she doesn't want to get fired. She doesn't want to lose her job. And then secondly, if we slow down, we know that shit's going to come to the surface, right? Stuff that we have been pushing down over time for years, for decades, it's going to come up. Because whenever you are like a little bit quiet, a little bit still, or even sometimes you're driving and you're kind of on this autopilot, and then all of a sudden a memory comes up or a feeling comes up that you don't want to deal with, it feels uncomfortable. And so what do? You just get busy and you push it down and you just stay in motion. But here's the downside of all of this, of not resting. When we don't rest and we don't allow ourselves to be present and we don't allow ourselves to be still and we don't recharge ourselves and we stay in this constant perpetual cycle of doing, then we inevitably hit a burnout cycle. You become burned out, and it can look like pressure, over functioning, and your nervous system is just completely fried. You ignore the signals that are happening in your body until your body eventually does intervene, because it's speaking to you all the time. So when you are actually burned out and you're exhausted, that is your body forcing your inner controller to take a back seat. It's just a matter of whether you actually let the inner controller take the back seat or not. How can we work with our inner controller? We understand how it can show up. We understand the problems, the consequences of letting our inner controller run wild. How do we work with the inner controller? Because we don't want to destroy this part of ourselves. Sometimes the inner controller actually does get shit done for us. It can be helpful to have the inner controller there. It was helpful at one point. It's just about how do we learn to befriend the inner controller and maybe update the way the inner controller operates, if you will. So the first thing is to really learn how to notice the voice. You start catching the language of I have to. That's the biggest indicator right there. And this is what I have been teaching and sharing to the girls that are in my community for young women, because they are just feeling so overwhelmed and so burned out. Like, I have to go to work. I have to go to school. I have to clean my apartment. I have to get to the gym and work out. I have to call my friends. I have to text this person. I have to go see my parents. I have to go grocery shopping. I have to food prep. Right? The list goes on and on. And so I asked them to really learn to take a pause and ask, is this true? Or is this your inner controller that's talking, right? So for one thing, you can say and ask yourself, like, do I have to go to the gym? And you might say, well, of course I have to go to the gym. I have to exercise to be strong. And then I would say, do you have to go to the gym? Or are you choosing to go to the gym because you want to feel stronger, you want to feel healthier, more energy, you want to look firmer? Like maybe you're choosing. So when you change the mindset to I choose to, instead of I have to, it changes everything. It lifts the pressure because now you're like, I get to choose to do this. I mean, you might not love going to the gym and it might take a little bit to get yourself there, but you are choosing it because you have a bigger why. You have a reason that you want to go to the gym. So again, if you are saying, I have to, just think about the pressure that's putting on you every single time you say, I have to, and then you pause. Is it true, or is this your inner controller? And it might feel really strange to do this at first, and it's going to be hard for you to remember to do this. And so I invite you to just keep at it and keep practicing it. When the inner controller is showing up, that I see that you're trying to help, like you want to have compassion. The last thing you want to do is resist the inner controller parts, because if you resist, she's just going to amp up and she's going to control even more. So it's like, I see you, inner controller. I see that you're trying to help me. It was and is trying to protect you. It's trying to protect your younger parts that at one point needed to feel safe. So you can now step in and be the adult that your younger parts need. The adult part of you can give the nurturing, can give the reassurance and say, it's okay. We are safe in this moment. We don't have to do everything right now. We don't have to solve everything right now. We don't have to figure everything out right now. We're safe. It's okay. And then take a slow, deep breath. And this helps to regulate your nervous system. And when your nervous system feels regulated, when your body feels safe and relaxed, your mind starts to feel relaxed. And the more your mind relaxes, the more your body relaxes. And so the more your body relaxes and your nervous system is regulated, now the inner controller can breathe and relax. And when the inner controller just relaxes and softens, life starts to slow down and your decisions become clearer. Creativity returns and peace, inner peace becomes possible, more joy. And then you can start to move through your days with more presence, more intuition, more alignment instead of control. Now, here's the thing. I used to say for the longest time, I call bullshit on that. I don't know how, I want to be present. I know that it makes a difference, but I can't do it. And I'm just being honest. It was not available for me or to me for the longest time. But I kept persistent. I kept practicing. I kept cultivating a practice of slowing down and breathing and healing my inner child, doing all of the inner work. And what I can say to you now, I can honestly say to you, while it is not perfect, I catch myself all the time in the I have to energy. But when I catch it, I do pause and I do pivot and then I do breathe and I slow down. And the more that I slow down, honestly, the more my intuition does speak to me, the more aligned my life feels, because I'm now allowing the space for the universe to guide me, for the breadcrumbs to show up in my life and tell me what's next. So for example, I used to, before, my inner controller used to, when she was being very loud and very much in the driver's seat, feel like she had to figure out exactly how I was going to run my podcast and run my business. I would hire this coach or that coach. I would learn this thing or that thing and just feel like I had to implement all these different strategies to be successful and to figure out what was going to be next. I was figuring out, I was forcing, trying to control an outcome all the time. That energy led me to feeling exhausted. There was actually a point about 1.5 years ago that I was contemplating being completely done with this podcast because I was coming at it from all the wrong energy. My inner controller was the one doing the podcast, not Kim. My inner controller was driving the bus. I'm being honest about that. But now I just slow down and I'm like, okay, what's the next episode going to be about? And I don't freak out because it comes, the breadcrumb comes to me. The idea, the inspiration comes in a form of like a download, as long as I'm slowing it down and I don't get nervous and anxious and try to force something to happen. The moment I try to force it, it just comes out sideways. It goes awry. Or if I even do get the outcome, okay, great, I got the outcome that I wanted or needed, but I'm exhausted or I'm burned out. So that's just a little example of how your life can be impacted and shift and transform in such a major positive way by just pausing when your inner controller is driving the bus, just pausing and surrendering. You're just surrendering that part of you and saying, it's okay. It really is okay. You don't need to protect me anymore. I am so grateful for you wanting to protect me all of these years. I see that you are just trying to help. But I'm good now. We're good. And I got this. If you want to give me some ideas or something, great, inner controller, but you don't have to keep me safe any longer. And so what I invite you to think about this week is, where in your life does your inner controller push the hardest? Is it at work? Is it in relationships with your kids, with your parents, friends? And what situations trigger the strongest have to energy? What might change if you didn't respond immediately to that pressure? Let me say that one again and think about that, because it might make your anxiety go to a 10, but I'm going to read it again and I'm going to invite you to give it a try. What might change if you didn't respond immediately to that pressure. And so finally, what I would say is that if you have any thoughts, any questions about the inner controller, if you're not sure what it looks like for you in your life and you're wanting to have some more guidance, you want to just have a chat. Number one, you can just email me and reach out and say, hey, Kim, I just listened to the episode on the inner controller. I sort of get it, but I would love to chat about it some more. If you're like, I know what my inner controller looks like and how she shows up, and you just want to share that with me. If you're here on YouTube, then I invite you to leave me a comment. I would love to read your comments, and I read them all and respond. And if you're really wanting to take this work deeper because you hear what I'm saying and you know there's truth to what I'm saying, and you feel the exhaustion, you feel the burnout in your life, and you're tired of that internal pressure that just never rests. Even when you go to sleep at night, maybe even your subconscious mind is going constantly and you don't have good sleep because there's this pressure. Your nervous system is going. And if you're just ready to be done, if you're in your 20s and you're wanting to have more support and be with other young women like yourself that get it, I invite you to let me know. You can email me. Go to my website, kimgrosscoaching.com. You can book a call with me. It's completely free. We can chat about it, or just email me. My email is there. My social medias are there. And we can talk about whether or not the group is a good fit for you. We meet every week for about an hour and 20 minutes. And I help them with these topics. They talk about and they support each other and share how they're trying to navigate their inner controller. So I appreciate you listening and tuning in to this episode of Masks Off, Inner Freedom for People-Pleasers and Perfectionists. And I'll see you on the next episode.
As we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say thank you for being here and for taking this time for yourself. If this episode resonated with you, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the podcast or leave a review. Even a quick star rating helps more people find this space and reminds the algorithms that these conversations matter. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have a question, a takeaway, or something that came up while you were listening, leave a comment or send it in. Let's keep the conversation going. This podcast isn't meant to be a one-way street. It's meant to feel like a community. If you want to learn more about me, my work, or the ways we can go deeper together, you can visit my website. All the details are there. Until next time, take a breath, take the mask off, and be gentle with yourself. I'll see you soon.